All right, today we have a studio tour. It's amazing. Today I wanted to head right down the road to my good friend Alan Goodwin's studio, Novel Studios. He has a wonderful space right here in North Mississippi in the greater Memphis area. And I've known Alan for the better part of about 17 years now. He is an amazing musician. He'll be extremely detailed in his setup and why he chooses to route things and do things certain ways. He is an amazing engineer and musician with a ton of experience.
Hey guys, I'm Alan Goodwin here at Novel Recording Co. I've built this place from the ground up. I went to Middle Tennessee State University and graduated from there with a Bachelor of Science, Audio Production, minors in Jazz and Entertainment Technology about 5 or 6 years ago. And ever since then, really before then, ever since I was born, I've been doing pretty much nothing but music. I've been in a studio of some kind, and my dad is a computer guy, so he always had equipment for me. I had instruments, and so since I was a little kid, I was at least experimenting with something, and all the way up to being 28 now. Then I have artists in here, and we work on all sorts of projects, so I'd love to show you around. So in 2018, so 5 years ago, I decided to move to this area, this neighborhood. Rates were good at the time, and they have house plans that you had to choose from in the neighborhood. There was a neighborhood builder, but he was really easy to work with, and he said if you want anything changed, I'm happy to do it. So this would be the master bedroom of this house plan initially, but I had him extended about 5 feet this way, and there's actually still windows back there that I covered up in case we ever need them again. And then as we're building it, I went ahead and added extra electrical provisions, and there's actually some conduits that go under the foundation to carry wires into what's really the bathroom closet that functions as an isolation booth if needed for vocals, guitar amps, whatever it is, and there's headphone feeds in there. So all that to say, this room, even though it's a master bedroom, is equipped with electrical infrastructure. It's even got different insulation in it to help keep sound out, as well as all the soundproofing that's inside the walls. So the idea was to make it a room that could be converted back into a bedroom one day for resale or whatever's needed, but still function as a studio at a little bit higher of a level than a typical bedroom in a house. And I think that's what we've accomplished here. So
tell us about your flow here, your workflow and the desk itself. Everything centers around that.
Yeah, that's right. This is mission control, in other words, and it actually kind of has to be here with the way the conduits run and the electrical. This is a brand new desk I just built this week, actually. I had one that had some more stuff on it with a similar design, but I've really figured out just the pieces that I need, and trying to keep my workflow faster rather than just having every single toy at my fingertips, but just having the things I need. So really all that's on this desk is nothing actually audio related. All the audio brains are in the rack or in the computer to the side of it. This is purely a control desk, meaning we have the Dofer LMK4, which is just a MIDI controller. It's a part of this. It can come apart pretty easily. So it's a composer keyboard, pretty easy. It just controls virtual instruments. We have the X-Touch, just the full-size X-Touch basic DAW control for fader rides. This is a fan control system that's off right now for just keeping things cool underneath. And then just a couple iPads that I use for Logic control or Pro Tools control. This controls the monitoring controller I have. I also use, one day I'll have some video things with Blackmagic in here with cameras. That's something I'm working on building. I do a lot of HomeKit lighting in here, so I have HomeKit there. I have M32 and X32 rack for monitors, so I have it controlling that. So there's increasing things controlled by iPads these days, so that's why I put 2 of the big 13-inch ones right here, just to kind of have any app I need at my fingertips.
And that was part of the reason you changed this desk design.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the old one had one iPad that was a smaller one that was handy, but I ended up using it so much, and also the X-Touch was further away, so my arm would start to hurt after extending it too far all day long, And instead of the Dofer, I had a Nord Stage 2 kind of split apart and built into it, but I wasn't really using the built-on sounds much. It was great to have occasionally, but it wasn't worth having on my main desk for day-to-day operation. So this is pretty much all I need with computer control, with fader rides, and with virtual instrument writing and playing. And that's basically a phone charger, MagSafe charger there.
Most guys would look at this and just be in love with how clean this looks. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you thought through this desk to design it. They're probably wondering how it works, but you've got a skeleton under basically a skin.
Right, so this is it kind of lifts up a little bit. This layer is just a facade, I call it. It's 1/2-inch plywood, just simple sanded plywood that I've spent a lot of care in finishing, obviously, but underneath it is just a 2x6 and some 2x10s and some little MDF platforms. It's just a frame built with brackets and heavy-duty screws and these pipe leg systems with wheels. So that's the actual structure, and everything else is just kind of covering up the ugly wood, in other words. So like the piano sits on a platform that I've measured out to be at the right height. The X-Touch sits on a platform that actually leans backwards in order to compensate for its forward-leaning design to give it that flush mount. These actually aren't mounted yet. I'm playing around with the final location on how far back I want them, but they'll be mounted one day and have some wires going to them.
You said you had a spot for a laptop back over
there.
Yeah,
back here, there you can't see it, but there's a regular duplex power outlet and a plate with HDMI and Cat 6, so you could have a laptop sitting here if a client came in and said, let me just plug it in. I got something not just to send you, but I just want to show you the way I have it in my DAW, and we don't have to worry about file transfers. I have a space for their laptop, and we can just plug it in and get going right away. And that seems.
And then your laptop is right over here on.
Yeah. Then for now, yeah, that's kind of laptop station. So it's just a little holder to keep it upright. Everything that plugs into that laptop, since I have to work from here and on the go, which is part of things these days, is just in this hub, which is on the ground back there somewhere. It's a CalDigit Thunderbolt 4 hub. It's got several Thunderbolt outputs, full speed, not just USB-C, but full speed Thunderbolt outputs, as well as regular USB 3 outputs. And so everything from the Dofer and the X-Touch, iPads, keyboard trackpad, to the Apollo, which is the brain, and I even have a 10 gigabit network for in here, so I can transfer files to a server. I can talk about that too, but all the heavy duty things are also in that hub. And so everything, backup files, backup drives, simple USB things, everything is within this hub except for power. And I leave my iLock off of it. That way I can just take it out real quickly and put it in my bag in a very specific location so it doesn't get lost. I could plug it in down there somewhere, but then I would need it because I need all my plugins on the go. So my routine is come in here, plug those 3 things in, and when I need to leave, it's real quick to unplug them, throw them in the bag, and I have my entire studio, essentially, besides the gear that's in this room, but I have all my sessions, all my plugins, everything with me on the go, and it's a beefed up Mac. It's the current M2 Max with 64 gig of RAM and 2 terabytes. It's got plenty. So
you used a Mac Mini before that?
Yep, I have a Mac Mini. It's over here somewhere. So this rack, the actual housing of it's temporary. All this gear was in that older desk I mentioned, kind of flush mounted, but again, it was a bigger desk. It was getting hard to reach, and so I'm working on building a rack that actually looks just like this desk with the same wood look and pipe look. It'll be at a slight angle. It's about a 30-degree angle, and it'll fit all this equipment, look a little nicer, but the equipment will be about the same. The brains of this whole studio is the Apollo X16, pretty standard issue. It gets 3 good preamps, which are these Avedis MA5s. That's a Neve 1073 style preamp, which is really great. It has these 28K switches, which kind of brightens it, but also it's almost like warmth, but in the high end. It's a really interesting take on it. It's something Mr. Avedis found, I think it was a flaw in some of the old Neve preamps, and so he emulated the flaw. Classic. And this right one here goes through these pieces as well. I really just use that for vocals and sometimes snare or something like acoustic guitar maybe. It's a retro double wide compressor. I believe it's very Moo. It's the Gen 1, not the Gen 2. It's got some tubes in it. A really nice compressor. This is inward connections to the Brute. It's like an LA2A. It's okay. I don't love it all the time, but it was free, so boom. And then this is a Lindell PEX 500. It's kind of like a Pultec EQ, also just okay. I may consider swapping those out at some point, but so much of what I do is in the box, and so I just want to have a few pieces that sound good on the front end occasionally. So 3 good channels of pre's, 8 okay channels of pre's. That's the Focusrite Claret Octapre, so it's not an interface, it's just the preamps that go analog out into the Apollo. So that's 11 channels that are my kind of main channels. And then if I need just a ton of channels, which is rare that I need, well, sometimes with drums I'll do more than 11, but if I need more, then I have the X32 that mainly does monitor mixes, but I also can use it as just a regular interface with its USB card. And then the way I do that is I don't run it through the Apollo, but I use what do they call it on Mac OS, where you can combine two audio sound cards. In other words, I forget, it's in Pro Tools they had it for years, and then they carried it over to Apple Mac OS as a default. But anyway, you can, as long as you get your word clock right and your timing right, it can work okay just to have a ton of channels. Right. So yeah, and then this is the monitor controller that I have an iPad to control. This is the Gen 2 of the Dangerous D-Box, and it's not just a monitor controller with several outputs and headphones and all the good things, but it also has 8 channels of summing, which I use during mixing. They have 2 separate boxes. You can do monitor control and summing separately, or they have this one that kind of has the best of both worlds. It's not huge monitor controlling, and it's not 16 channels of summing, but it's great for me, and it does everything I really need. I'll just subgroup things out and get a little bit of analog summing, which really widens your stereo image and makes some of your mono things like kick, snare, bass, and lead vocal really punch down the middle, and just helps those transients a little bit. So just one more thing to be analog. I try to keep my analog things to a minimum because of the price and the inflexibility of it being not very mobile these days. But for me, preamps, converter, and summing, and maybe a little bit of outboard compressor and EQ is kind of the main elements of what I've experienced analog.
And then you've got your patch bay.
Yeah, and then I just kept everything XLR instead of doing the smaller TT connectors. One, it just gave me an excuse to use all these white XLR connectors I had, which I think looked great. And yeah, it was just easier for me. So I have inputs from all over the studio, even have some around the house. I have some room mics in the living room if I need to open the doors and get a drum far sound, room far, or if I want a livelier sounding room to do choir in. I've done that before. In there, it's got some monitor feeds as well for headphones, ISO booth feeds, all sorts of stuff. And yeah, then a few different outputs. I have it hooked up to where I can send things through my pedal board if I need to, because I know some of these pedals pretty well, so I'll occasionally send a vocal through some of these delays, and they have a plug-in to some of these things now, but some of them they never will probably, and so right. I like to have that there. And then hiding under here is just a little ART headphone amp, which actually takes the mixes from the X32 and sends them all over the room just with...
Tell us about your studio monitors and your choices.
So these are just plain Yamaha HS8s. They're about 10 years old, and then underneath is the HS8S sub as well, just one of them. And my philosophy here, they look like NS10s, which is the classic studio standard. They don't sound at all like NS10s. That was not the reason getting them. I A/B'd a bunch one day at a store, and they sounded the best for the price range for me. And that was it while I was in high school. And my thing since then, I've thought about getting nicer ones, and there's been some options that are not too expensive, but still are nicer, officially than these.
But your ears are used to these.
That's the most important thing.
That's my reason for not changing right now.
Yeah,
I know my monitors.
Well, yeah, for me, one of the I've had 2 cars in my life, and when I swapped to that new car, I got depressed because nothing sounded the same, and it was stock audio in a Chevy Traverse into stock audio in a 4Runner, but still what I know. And so honestly, that reminded me, wait a second, maybe I want to rethink getting new studio monitors, just because I know it doesn't show me all the detail and we can get all analytical on it and stuff like that, but honestly, for me, it's much more worth it to have a reference that you know. I mean, it's the philosophy when you're running live sound and you speaker check to a song that you know the classic one's Hotel California. Everybody uses that song. I use Shut Up and Dance. I use a few different ones because I've heard them on every single type of sound system there is. Restaurants, car, really nice line arrays and studio speakers. So I know the mix. So if there's a problem with the live sound rig, I can fix it and trust it. And so it's the same philosophy here, is that if there's a problem, even if it's not $10,000 monitors, I can trust that I know that it's a problem. And so that's my philosophy here. I may upgrade one day, but I probably would at least keep these on an AB. Now I will say I only really I learned this from a guy in Nashville. The only portion of mixing that I really do on here is when I crank it to get the tones of things right, to really sit perfectly in that position and make sure it sounds perfect, whatever the source is. When I actually mix and balance all the sources and do fader rides, I send it over here through the dangerous monitor controller to these actual NS10s, and then there's an actual sub that goes with it, and then a crappy Crown amp that runs it all. Doesn't sound the best at all, but it sounds like NS10s, and they're not pointed at anything specific. They're on the left. It's weird, and I'll turn the volume way down. I'll make sure it's at a level that I'm used to, which is not that high at all, and I will actually try to distract myself just a little bit. Sometimes it's a muted TV show on this part of the screen over here in the corner. Sometimes it's a conversation with somebody, or just getting my brain on something else, and then I'll hit play and start to do fader rides. So the idea is that if anything jumps out when I'm distracted, listening to not good monitors, not in a good location, at a quiet volume, then at that point, if something jumps out, then it's going to jump out everywhere. And so that's how I do fader rides, and it's proven successful over the last 9 years since I learned that from that guy. And it's easy to swap back and forth. It doesn't mean I literally am like, don't touch it. I'll bring it back over here if I need to hear the image or something like that. But for the most part, balancing, it's over here and it works. So I would try that. It lets you not turn to compression to fix things. It lets you not turn to overhyping the low end or effects. Writing effects is a huge thing for that, because people put either too much or too little reverb on things, and so knowing that exact balance, you pretty much have to do it this way. At least for me, you have to distract yourself. The guy I learned it from, his thing was golf. He always had golf on a separate display, and when it was time to ride faders, he'd send it over to some terrible speakers in the back, lower level, and he would just stare at the golf screen and then put his hand on the fader. And he'd even strike up a conversation with me sometimes, like, look at what they're doing here on the golf. You see how, and he's riding the lead vocal of a top record. I'm like, what is happening right now? And he explained his philosophy to me, and it started to make sense. So that's a long answer, but that's my philosophy on monitoring. So,
all right, let's talk about instruments in the room, and let's start with maybe the beast right here, which I've heard so many stories about. This piano.
This is a Yamaha GP1. It's a baby grand, pretty standard, 5.5 foot. I had this piano when I was 8. The piano was my first instrument, and before I really started any of the recording side of things, producing side of things, I was just a musician, and I started with Suzuki, classical piano playing, and so my parents were gracious enough to get me this piano, and it has stayed with me ever since. It's a beautiful piano. It's got a great balance as far as baby grands go. It's not too bright, not too dull. I get it tuned every so often. Again, it's one of those things, I just know it well. A lot of my piano playing has been shaped by how this particular instrument responds. And so even as I use modelers, 9 times out of 10, I'm not reaching for this to actually record it, because I want the sound of an upright, or the sound of a bigger grand, or the sound of whatever it is, an old saloon piano. But the important part is that what I model how those virtual instruments need to sound off of is the way the real instrument feels. Same philosophy with drums or guitar amps or whatever you're modeling. The models can be pretty good these days, can be worth using for sure, but they're really powerful when what you're listening for is not a preset or the way somebody else uses it, but what you remember feeling based on the real instrument. And so for me, it's incredibly important, even though I only record with this 10% of the time, to have it here to remember what my piano feels like and sounds like, and it gives me a foundation, a reference point for when I go to the virtual instruments, because I know that if something is not right there, again, I can trust it. I know, no, it's not just right, not right because I think it's not right. It's not right because I know what the real one feels like and sounds like, and so I'm gonna change the presets, do whatever crazy settings it looks like and has to be like, even if nobody else does it that way, I'm going to do that on the virtual instrument because I know what I want it to feel like. And I think that's what makes the difference in in this world of modeling and virtual instruments. So.
And you've got the Nord Electro 4D on top, and you've just got a piece of acrylic that you put down to...
Yeah, 3/4 inch piece of acrylic that a friend of mine in Hernando, Mississippi cut as a part of a bigger project. I don't use music stands, so I just took that piece of the piano off. And yeah, this is I really exclusively use this for B3, so it's got an expression pedal somewhere. It's actually not in here right now. And it's got the waterfall key bed, so I consider it my B3. Yeah, I had the stage 2 over here, but just didn't use the built-in sounds. But a B3 is different. It's got different keys. It's got a different amount of keys. Had to have the real drawbars. I like thinking of it as its own instrument. It helps me get in the mode of organ correctly. The same way a bass is a different instrument than a guitar. They look the same. They kind of are the same, but they're totally different. So, by the way, I mic this often with Cascade fat heads. It's the old ones before the current company, whoever it is, acquired Cascade. They're the Lundahl transformer ones. For me, ribbon mics sound awesome on a piano like this that has a little bit brighter tendency.
The mics are darker.
The mics are darker, yeah. They crush the transients. They're just warm. And then I'll also stick a mono mic normally down on the pedals to get the
Oh, I've never heard anybody.
And yeah, well, in the virtual instruments, it's something I use all the time to make it sound real. And so that's a really helpful thing to have, just an extra channel, even if you use it barely in there and filter it heavily. It's just to have a little bit of realism and then room mics, of course, and as well. But so this is a Yamaha Absolute Hybrid Maple. It's their current generation of the classic Maple Custom series, which started in the 90s, and I believe this is the official 4th generation, because they had the Maple Custom, well, maybe 3rd. They had the Absolute, and then maybe there's a different Absolute one at one time, but this is the current one. It's maple with a ply of wenge in the middle, which makes it just a little bit tougher, because maple sounds so even and just well-rounded and balanced. It's the most balanced wood for drums that I know of, but that wenge gives it just a little bit more punch to kind of fit in the classic Yamaha birch vibe, which Recording Customs are well known for, Stage Customs are well known for. And so for me, it has the warmth and well-balancedness of maple, but a little bit more punch to give it that Yamaha sound. So I ordered custom sizes on this. It's a 22x14 kick, 13x9, and an 18x16 floor, because I mostly do worship music and rock and bigger sounding drum things. And for me, an 18, you can tune it up to the range of a 16 and get a longer note, a better sounding note. So for me, an 18 is kind of an essential floor tom size.
I see a Sennheiser 421.
Yep, so yeah, on floor tom we have 421, and then a big thing for me is bottom floor tom and really bottom tom mics. I have a Beta 52 on the bottom of the tom, and then I think on the bottom of that one's an E602, a Sennheiser, just because I only had 2 Beta 52s, and one's on the kick drum there. So, and then so 57 on the top of the rack. It just doesn't matter to me. It's all going to sound all right anyway. This is an Audix i5. It's like a 57, but has a slight bump at 110 hertz or so, which is what I like on a snare anyway. And then there's a Beta 57 on the bottom of the snare right now. I use a Sennheiser E609 for the crotch mic or knee mic, whatever you want to call it there. It's normally crushed and destroyed in processing anyway, so you could really stick anything there and it'd probably sound fine.
What snare drums do you like? You've got quite a collection.
Yeah, so for most worship stuff, it's a Black Beauty. That's an actual Ludwig 8x14. Yeah, I got it before they were $950 or whatever they are now as well. I need some more metal snares. I'd like to have a copper snare and maybe a steel one, but for now I just have a bunch of wood options. This is a Beach Custom Absolute 14x7, pretty hard to find. It's a very open and just think like 2000s rock snare. It sounds great if you tune it high. It's got tons of ring in a really cool way. This is a current generation recording custom, so it's a birch snare, 14x8, pretty classic studio drum. It can get a wide tuning range and just sounds like a wood snare. It's kind of hard to beat the energy in that. Oak custom, yeah, that's an older one. It's a 14x7, just like the Beach. This snare sounds really interesting. It's got a very short note, and it's almost kind of like an effect snare compared to some other woods, because it's not very lively. It's almost like
They sound more metal, like a metal snare to me.
it's contained, and it's got a really sweet sound. So it's great for like just quick kind of darker singer-songwrite stuff. That's what I would use that for. This is a Risen Maple 14x8. They're now called Franklin drums. It's just an older one. It's just I wanted to have a 14x8 maple snare because again, maple's so well balanced. So it's not quite as strong sounding as a birch, but it's just well rounded. And then this is just an old stage custom that was one of my first real drums, so keep it there for sentimental values. It's pretty torn up and warped from hot trailers and all that, but
You've got very large, thin cymbals.
Yep, so I've been
Wash sound.
That's right. The Heartbeat stuff is what I've been loving here lately. That's a Heartbeat 26 Epic ride, and this is a Heartbeat 24 Special Edition crash. It's got the rivets a little brighter. And then I have a host of Istanbul stuff as well. This is a 24-inch Sultan Jazz ride, which is hard to beat. I played about 12 of them before I picked that one out. I have a couple other Istanbul choices in here that are great for the studio that I've just honestly been really liking the Heartbeat stuff. It's a little bit easier to control. It's about 20% quieter, I would say. Definitely cheaper. Really great for live, and I've been using it in the studio as well, because why not? I have a K-Con ride and a couple old custom things for different flavors, and then a ton of 20-inch options, because I use 20-inch hi-hats. That is something I'm laughed at for all the time, but I think it's great if you learn to control them and have a stand that's strong enough to support them, then it can be great. So on the bottom is an A custom crash that's I've had for a very long time, and then just an Istanbul dark crash on the top. And you can really get different vibes. 18 is probably the middle ground for most worship stuff nowadays, but for me 20 just gives it the option to be kind of a crash or more of an accent than just a steady. So I like having the bigger ones there. Oh, and the other kit, real quick to show you, this is a Ludwig 1968 whatever series, just the standard ones, and they came pretty rough. I bought them used from a guy, but the reason I got them was...
Is that the Green Oyster?
It's Blue Oyster. It's the standard. Yeah, it's 2213, but it's an 18-inch floor tom, just like my Yamahas, which from that era I had never seen before at all. And it was also way cheaper than any of the regular size ones. Because they were beat up, they had rust all over them. So got them in, restored them, and they have that old, slow, really great vibe. They tune low easily. They're not as strong or as sharp transients as the Yamahas, not as modern sounding. But for me, for worship stuff, with drums not being a primary instrument, between the Yamahas and the Ludwigs and a host of these snares and cymbals, I kind of get any vibe that I think the modern worship stuff needs. So yeah.
And while we're standing on this side of the studio, tell us about the diffusion wall that you built your art.
Oh yeah, so the name of the studio is Novel Recording Co., and the Heartbeat is from song to story. That's our motto. We want to tell stories, not just songs. And so the idea for this was that it's brand reinforcement and also sound diffusion, just a little bit. It's nothing professional. It's a bunch of books that I got from a friend for free from a middle school that was getting rid of them, just screwed into a piece of plywood. But the varying depths of them breaks up the sound a little bit, especially on this back wall, first reflection. And I think it just looks kind of neat, the idea of the pages facing outward. The pages soak in a little more sound than the bindings do. And that's also what we care about, is the pages and not the binder, can't judge a book by its cover kind of thing. So this is my wife's desk / guitar workbench where I change strings and excuse me, she does some work sometimes in here with me. It's kind of a catch-all. Right now we've got some of Mark's pedals sitting on it. But yeah, so Guitar World, did you say start with acoustic or either one? So this is a Breedlove Masterclass Cocobolo with Adirondack spruce top. I think it's called the E, Cocobolo E. Mm-hmm. I got this the week before COVID, and it is just it's the best acoustic guitar I've ever heard. I can say that pretty easily. The low end on this, first of all, it's gorgeous. It's their their concerto size, which is in between a typical dreadnought and a typical OM, so a little bit bigger than an OM for the low end size of a dreadnought, but also a little more balanced like an OM. And it's mic'd up, it's beautiful. It came with an LR Baggs Anthem in it, which is the best pickup I've ever heard for an acoustic guitar, where you can balance between the mic and the pickup. And it's got mediums on it, which is pretty thick for me, but that's what it said to do. And when a guitar tells you exactly what string to put on it, I'm inclined to believe them. So I just kind of leave it there. I got this in an area near Birmingham that was actually out of a city limit too, so it didn't have city sales tax as well as so it's cheaper deals in a store that you wouldn't expect to find a guitar like this. It was more of a high school band music store, so it had been sitting there for years and nobody ever wanted it, and so I was able to talk them down. And that day I had played probably 100 different guitars, just at several different stores looking for one. And this was the only one. When I test guitars like that, pick them up, play one chord, put it back. I don't want to spend time noodling. That's not what it's about. And this was the only one that, without any kind of fabrication in my heart or mind, made me just want to go back to it after trying a couple others. I want to hear that again.
It spoke to you.
It spoke to me, yeah. And so the salesman went and got the case. He knew he had me just at that. I'd only played 2 chords on it, and I'm like, man, this guy. So anyway, that's the Breed Love. Hardly ever play it live just because it's so special to me. And I don't know what I would do if something happened to that thing. I often refer to it as my girlfriend, just to make Harmony, my wife, mad. She says it's going to end up in a lake one day. But this is my live guitar. It's an Eastman E6 OM. So I went to Martin Music. Shout out to Eric here in Memphis, and I blind tested with Andrew Webster every OM under $1,000 or around that price range they had. So I closed my eyes, and he gave me 8 or 10 of them. Played one chord, gave him, and then I told him my favorite one, number 7, whatever, and then he mixed them up, and we did the same 10 again, and I picked the same one both times, even though it's a different number. So I was like, well, I guess that's it. I don't care what brand it is. I tried some Larave's, Taylor's, whatever else, and it was an Eastman, and it was this particular one, which I believe is Indian rosewood, or no, it may be mahogany. I can't even remember, honestly. It doesn't say. That's how little I cared about the specifics of this guitar, because all I knew for stage, I wanted an OM because it's easier to handle and very well balanced sounding, and if I put an Anthem in it, I could get plenty of low end out of it, so I didn't need the expression of a dreadnought for what I do. Yeah, comfortable. I wanted a no cutaway because I prefer the sound of a non cutaway, even though it's harder to play. And so yeah, it was an Eastman. They went on to tell me the stories about how Dana Bourgeois of Bourgeois Guitars now goes through the Eastman factory and doesn't build the guitars for them, but essentially tells each person what they're doing wrong and how to do it better. So it's still an Eastman at the Eastman price of $800 or whatever it was, but so you can see little marks of Dana's craftsmanship in it. And I've played this thing live now for almost 3 years, and it holds up. It sounds amazing with the Anthem in it, and honestly, it sounds great for studio too when I need something a little bit more controlled than I call her Coco. So that's definitely a great guitar. It's been outside, it's been everywhere. This is a older Martin production guitar that's it was cheap, and I used it for a while. Doesn't sound that great at all, but it's awesome for when I need just something quick and dirty. It kind of sounds like plywood, so it doesn't really have any resonance, but sometimes you almost want that trashy, no depth sound. So I keep it around for that, and if this is honestly the guitar, if like family's over and like, go get one of Uncle Alan's guitars, I give them this one. This is an old Epiphone. Some of y'all may know this model because it looks like it's about to cut you with the cutaway. It's like a $200 guitar. It's about as thin as an electric, and I used this. I actually chipped it and didn't know what to do about it as a 12-year-old, so I put gaff tape over it, and there it is all these years later. Terrible electronics, and so what do you do with a guitar like this? You high string it, and so it is my large mandolin. High strung acoustic. So Duesenberg is my main brand. I just love the build quality. I think it's second to none. And the sound also, same way, second to none. This is a Phonic, a Star Player Phonic. It's one of their current models. Nothing really super rare about this one or special, other than it's straight from Germany because it's way cheaper to buy it that way, even with the import fees. It's their classic pickup combination of a humbucker, they call it their Grand Vintage, and a P90. The difference with the Phonic is, one, these covers and the entire look of the thing is brilliant with these wing inlays and the whole Art Deco deal. They even put binding inside the hole here. Just no detail spared. And this one has 4 pickup positions, so it's their standard neck, bridge, then they normally have a middle that's kind of an out of phase thing, but then they have a regular middle finally on a guitar, which they haven't had in a while, and it's a Les Paul size guitar. I'd say this is my main guitar, both live studio now. Plays like a dream. It's got super lights on it, 9s, that's what I use, and set up by Mike Stoker, and this thing rocks and can get really gentle as well. So incredible guitar. I recommend it. They make a black one as well. This is a little bit more rare Duesenberg. That's kind of my secondary live and studio guitar. Another Star Player, same body size. This is their 25th anniversary model, which has these special pickups called the Split Kings in it. They only put these in some solid body guitars and this one. So this is the only semi-hollow that I know of that Duesenberg's ever put these pickups in, and you can't buy these pickups just by themselves, so it's pretty hard to find this setup. They just, instead of it being a regular split pickup where you can, tap it or split it, which is normally a humbucker that you cut in half, which never sounds great. They started with a real single coil pickup, which sounds great on its own, and then add a coil to it. So it's kind of the other way to think about it, and that's what these little switches are for. So honestly, this thing can sound like a Telecaster, like a semi-hollow Telecaster, in a way that I never would have expected to hear out of a Duesenberg, but that's how I think of this guitar, as my Duesenberg Tele. But then I can switch it to humbuckers if I need a little bit more right away. And yeah, silver sparkle, it's awesome. Got it for a killer deal. So then the final Duesenberg is a one that there's not very many of. There's only 3 of these, I'm told. Got this 10 years ago. It's a 335 size. It's called the 440 Nashville Special. And it's the same pickup configuration as the white one I showed you. It just doesn't look quite the same. This thing, even though it's the same pickups, same kind of hardware, all that, the size difference just makes it sound totally different, just like a Les Paul in 335. This thing goes to 11 in every way, and it can clean up a little bit, but it just sounds huge, and it's hard to tame it sometimes, so I save this for just the biggest of sounds. But this was my main guitar live for years, and most people know me by this guitar, I would say, so it's never leaving me. This is a 98 White Falcon Junior, which is a real fun one. Just pretty classic. It's got the patent pending pickups, got that Gretsch sound. It only does one thing, but it does that thing very well, and it looks killer. That's one thing I don't have in a Duesenberg is the Filtertron sound, so this really comes in handy for that. I use it a good bit live, and it plays great. I don't love the floating bridge. I don't love some of these older things, but it's awesome still.
One project at a time.
One project at a time. Some of those are hard to reach, so I won't get all of them out, but the other ones here are a 2011 Les Paul. It's a gold top with Lawler minis in it, mini humbuckers, which is just awesome. It's got that solid body Les Paul thing. Les Paul was my first guitar ever, not this one. So I feel at home on a Les Paul, and it doesn't rock as hard as the Duesenbergs, but it's got that Les Paul solid body thing. I have an 80s Japanese Telecaster, black and gold. It's got a Bigsby on it. All these guitars have Bigsbys on them. Classic Tele. This one's worth getting out. This is a Tele that I built, my first guitar build. I took a Mexican Tele I had, ordered a new neck, and completely redid the finish on the body and pretty much everything else about the body. First of all, it's very heavy. I didn't account for that. I added TV Jones, they're called something Sonic pickups. They're like old Dynasonic pickups, and then a Powertron. And then this is it's called Awesome Guitars. It's a pickup switching system that lets you do any coil, any out of phase, any combination. So it's got like 170 something combinations, and I don't remember what they all do. So I just it makes all sorts of sounds, and it's basically just a really cool studio tool. I put the Chet Atkins Bigsby arm on it. I hand cut a birch pick guard here in the thin line style. This is drum wrap that was supposed to be champagne sparkle like the old Gretsch drums, but ended up more pink, and then I stained the back of the wood there. And this is a Wenge single piece of wood neck, so the fretboard's not separate. And then it got gold frets on it, which I had never seen before. So a very strange project, but really cool. And then the final ones here, I have an Airline Guitars H78. It's like a 335 with gold foil pickups, and it's got 3 of them, so it's like a Strat 335 sound. And it's got hymnal paper all over it, because that's cool. And then this is a Dan Electro baritone, and Coke bottle, no, not Coke bottle, it's called Aqua Burst, that's what it's called. Then basses, I have a brand new American standard 5-string P bass, and then an old Squier 5-string J bass, which has been with me for a while, so both flavors of bass. Amp-wise, they're not all in here right now, but this is my main one. It's a Vox AC30 hand-wired head, which I've had for a long time, and I don't use it hardly ever live or in the studio anymore because I have it profiled in various ways, but for the longest time I would use it and a Tyler JT46. It's kind of like a JTM45 style head, and I would put them both into this stereo cab that I built that has 2 different speakers in it, an Alnico Gold and a Jensen Electric Lightning, and just run 2 different cables to them and mic them up with these gooseneck stands. And now I just model everything after
Went
that.
to Iridiums from amps, and then you've gone from Iridiums now to, what are you using for modeling?
Yeah, they're in the other room. So yeah, I went to Iridiums for a while, which were fine, but they are modelers, not profilers, so they model an AC30, but it's on the top boost channel. I prefer the normal channel, and there's just not as many tone crafting options with it. I prefer open back cabs. I have a lot of very specific things in my amps that I rely on for some of the openness and large tones that I look for. And so I got rid of the Iridiums, as much as I love the flexibility of them, and got 2 Kemper racks, which are in a single 6-space rack in the other room, and I just modeled the AC30 and used that live. But here just today, actually, I got a couple of these Tone X's in, and I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to see how the profiling on these works, because they're a lot cheaper. Everybody seems to be raving about them, and if they can profile my amp in the same, if not better way than the Kempers, then I'll probably get rid of the Kempers and put those. I'll put them back on a pedal board. I don't want to carry that. I used to carry around so much, and I feel bad for complaining about carrying that Kemper rack, but I'm complaining about it. So, well, hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for staying on the very detailed tour of Novel Recording Co. Hope you enjoyed it. If you'd ever like to come hang out or do a project, work together somehow, I do a lot of remote work, in-person work, all kinds of things, and just love meeting new people if you're in the area or passing through. Mark's going to put a QR code somewhere on the screen here, and you can look me up on the internet, on Facebook, Instagram, anything like that. It'll have my phone number. Just reach out at Novel Recording Co. here. We'd love to see you.
If you haven't subscribed, please do so. We'll see you on the next one.